So let me first ask and request Mr. Mahesh Pradhan to give his views on role of environmental education for sustainable development goals.
And a couple of other things. So it's very impressive to be back at a conference on nature, relating to nature for SDGs. Yeah, I'd just like to start off and in terms of highlighting the role of environmental education for the SDGs, in the sense that we've moved from the MDGs 2000 to 2015, now to SDGs 2015 to 2030. There's been a huge change in the last 15 years, and I think this change is going on even faster. Yeah, one thing I was just reading about, and which is now coming up, is this whole issue of this new era, the so-called Anthropocene, where I think human civilization started way back, I think, with 570 million years ago, with the Paleozoic era, but now the current discussions, and I think this is with the International Commission on Stratigraphy, which is now going to debate a whole new era. The last one, which is ongoing, is this Holocene, which has been going on for 11,700 years. But now, perhaps, they're going to discuss the start of a new era, which is caused by humans, the Anthropocene, which is affecting our planet. Just a few statistics. Concrete. More than half of concrete, all the concrete produced was in the past 20 years alone. If you're looking at plastic, 300 million metric tons of plastic annually. So now plastics or microplastics is in virtually everywhere. Yeah? Oceans, waterways, so on and so forth. If you're looking at the land, even smaller area of Earth, now we have about 25% of ice-free land. And just, I think 3 centuries ago, this was 50%. So we've reduced this. And this is leading to species decline. If you're looking at nitrogen and phosphorus, yeah, so in our soils, it's been doubled. I think the largest nitrogen impact in the past 2.5 billion years. Like that, when the list goes on, black carbon, so on and so forth. But in this backdrop and this urgency, this whole SDG process and drawing on the 8 MDGs, this time has been negotiated, and as you heard from our Special Secretary, a long negotiated process that resulted in the 17 goals and 169 targets, where I think the common, or one of the most important factors that are different from the MDGs is this whole issue of universality. It applies to everyone, yeah? Not just the developing countries. So these 17 goals to everyone, but of course with the CBDR, the Common but Differentiated Responsibilities principle. The second thing is, with the 17, the integrated approach. Because earlier in the MDGs, we had social, very strong, the economics, and environment perhaps not as strong. So this time, with the 17, a more integrated approach. And at the same time, this gives us a vision for the next 15 years with an aspirational vision. So with UNEP, the United Nations Environment Programme, we're supporting the environmental dimension of the SDGs. Yeah? But with the SDGs, and especially Goal 4, which is on education, where we've looked at the issues whereby education can make a difference for the SDGs. And here this morning, we already heard, I think, a lot of the key factors, values. This is something that education has a very deep impact from a small child to all of life. The values, the behavior, and the ethics of this lifestyle. And including, I think, on the lifestyle, which Kartikeya summarized from our honorary governor, where he especially mentioned this consumption, the greed lifestyles has to change. And in fact, we at UNEP, we have a program on the 10-year framework program, which is looking at education for sustainable lifestyles. We also have an opportunity now to build on this whole decade of education for sustainable development, the past 10 years, 2005 to end of 14, and the new Global Action Program. But this morning I just wanted to share just an example before I end my 7 minutes, to look at one of our key flagships within UNEP, where we're looking at engaging with higher education. So UNEP has been involved in a lot of scientific assessments. We have the IPCC we're working with. We have a brand new IPBES, not brand new anymore, the Intergovernmental Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services. And in fact, Dr. Ashok Khosla chairs the International Resource Panel, IRP. So with that, we have the Global Universities Partnership, now about approaching 800 universities, looking at education and here curriculum. So with Professor Hela, we've been working on mainstreaming environmental education across the curriculum. We're looking at MOOCs, these massive open online courses, again, huge reach, but a lot of challenges in terms of finishing, so on and so forth. We have a couple of them lined up. We're working on training programs for policymakers, and this is with different universities from Finland to Tongji in China. And last but not least, we're networking all these universities together. So yesterday we had a very interesting session. We had more than 50 participants trying to get something in India also, looking at a national network, and especially since India has a Supreme Court ruling for compulsory environmental education at all the levels. So we want to benefit from that. And in fact, later this year, MIT will host our GUPES Partnerships Forum in Boston, where we're hoping that many of you can also join us. So in conclusion, just to mention, I think we're at a critical phase. The Anthropocene is on us. It is being debated at the highest scientific levels. We have a brand new opportunity with the SDGs for the next 15 years. The power of education has never been stronger in terms of behavior change, in terms of value, in terms of ethics, the skills, knowledge for green jobs, so on and so forth. And then there's a lot of opportunity, and this is where UNEP is focusing on higher education to look at promoting education for sustainable development, environmental education, and the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you.
So from Mahesh let's move on to Adriana from Venezuela and listen to her on what the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change mentions about education and what is the role that is envisaged for education in the convention and obviously now in the agreement. So over to you, Adriana.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. It is an honor for me to be participating in this international conference and to be for the first time in India, an extraordinary country, the country of Gandhi that has inspired the world. And one of the key messages that Gandhi said is that every person should be the change that they want to see in the world. And here is an honor to be with many change makers that are leading by example. Also, I would like to thank the Center for Environmental Education and its director, Kajiteya, for his leadership, but as well for all the team that has been working for many months to put together this conference. Thanks a lot for this effort and thanks a lot for making this possible. I would like to share with you 3 key messages about what happened at COP21 in Paris and why it is an historical agreement. The second is how education has been included in the climate change agreement, but as well how the climate change process is within the UNFCCC, the Climate Change Convention. And third, some good practices, some key actions and recommendations about the process. What happened at COP21 and why the people say that it is an historical agreement? In December, in Paris, 159 nations adopted the Paris Agreement on Climate Change. It has been the first time that over 100 heads of the states and governments work together at the same time, in the same place, showcasing the highest political commitment on climate change. The Paris Agreement is a universal agreement that establishes commitments for all parties. The main objective of this climate agreement is to keep the global temperature rise this century below the 2 degrees Celsius, and also to try effort to limit the temperature increase even further 1.5 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial levels. There are some key points that are essential for this Paris Agreement. Regarding mitigation, all countries have commitments to reduce their emissions to achieve the goal of the temporal goal. Also, adaptation. Adaptation has been a strength in this agreement, and the idea is to give support to developing countries to build resilience and to adapt to the effects of the climate change. 3 key enablers are also part of the agreement: finance, technology, and capacity building to enhance climate change action by all countries. The basis for this climate agreement were the intended national determined contributions. What are these? Are the action plans that each country defined with their commitments on climate change. In Paris, when the governments got together, 188 countries have submitted their intended national determined contributions, and it made a really change in the approach, because it is a bottom-up approach to build this international agreement. Parties agree in Paris that they will submit the national determined contributions every 5 years, and that in 2023 will be an stock take to assess the progress in the implementation. Also, another key element of the climate agreement is that it recognizes the key role that the non-party stakeholders play in the implementation. It means civil society, the private sector, financial institutions, citizens, cities, and also other subnational authorities. Following the adoption of the Paris Agreement in New York, on the 22nd of April, that is the Earth Day, there will be a special event where, for the signature, this agreement will be open for a signature for 1 year, and it will enter into force once at least 55 parties, 55 countries that represent at least the 55% of the global emissions have ratified the agreement. The Paris Agreement is a long-term vision for a low-emission, green, and climate-resilient development. And how education has been integrated into the climate change agreement. First of all, you may know that Article 6 of the Convention is the article that invites all parties to promote education, training, public awareness, public access to information, public participation, and international cooperation. Parties have recognized that for effective implementation of the adaptation and mitigation actions, education plays a fundamental role. In 2012, at the COP in Doha, parties agreed the Doha Work Program on Article 6 of the Convention. It is an 8-year program that sets up and brings the general actions that country, but also other stakeholders can implement in these 6 elements of Article 6. During the COP21 in Paris, for the first time ever in the history of the COP, was organized an education day on the 4th of December. And this education day recognized the key role that education played in all the process. It started with a ministerial event where ministers of education, but also ministers of environment work together. It is one of the key messages. We need to enhance the cooperation and the articulation between the environmental sector, but as well the education sector. And climate change is not an environmental issue anymore. It is a development issue, and therefore is a cross-sectoral issue that requires the work of all different stakeholders together. Also, at the COP was organized a side event on formal climate change education, discussing how countries have integrated climate change education into their curriculum, different programs to train teachers, how have developed teaching materials and other programs. And as well, a side event on non-formal climate change education, exploring innovative ways for climate change learning, for instance, music, social media, art, how we can best communicate and how we can mobilize action. In Paris, we can say that education has been recognized and has been elevated to the highest political agenda. Why? The climate change agreement in the preamble recognized the key role of education, but as well that the sustainable lifestyle and the sustainable pattern of consumption and production play an important role in addressing climate change. Also, the climate change agreement has a dedicated article. It is Article 12 that says, parties shall cooperate in taking measures as appropriate to enhance climate change education, training, public awareness, public participation, and public access to information, recognizing the importance of this step with respect to enhance action under this agreement. Also, the Paris Agreement has a decision that contains 2 paragraphs related to education and invites the first conference of the Paris Agreement, it means at COP22 in Morocco, to explore ways to enhance the implementation of Article 6 of the Convention. The third point that I wanted to share with you is why this conference is so relevant and how your recommendations will fit all the process. First of all, under the Doha World Program, there are several recommendations that parties can undertake. For instance, to promote education, formal, no formal, and informal, include climate change education into the curriculum, develop a national strategy with a long-term goal to promote climate change education. Also, develop different public awareness materials and enhance the cooperation between the government and civil society and different partners. There are several good practices, just starting for where we are, the Center for Environmental Education, as Cayetella mentioned, the train is one of these good practices that we hope also to showcase at the Climate Change Conference and other international meetings. In Indonesia, Benin and Uganda, they developed a national strategy addressing the 6 elements of Article 6. Dominican Republic mobilized from the national budget more than $1 million for training teachers on climate change education. Mexico included into their national climate change law one chapter dedicated to climate change education. Malawi developed training material for teachers in cooperation with teachers. And also we have been working with the CEE in the compilation of good practices that will be highlighted in the UNFCCC process. Some of the recommendations, just to finalize my intervention, is that there are so key questions that during the conference you can discuss. For instance, what strategies are effective to change attitude and behaviors towards sustainable development? What is needed to advance from public awareness to action? And what good practices we can identify that could be replicated? Just to finalize, I would like to highlight that the results of this conference we would like to showcase at the COP22 in Morocco during the Education Day. Also, as we are in the review of the Doha Work Program, 2016 is a key year where different ideas and recommendations to move the agenda forward could be included and where parties will discuss in May and as well at the COP. And the government of India, with this commitment, also can bring your recommendations to the table. And the results of the COP and all these recommendations and the review of the Doha Work Program also will feed the process of the GAP. Then it is working together to make possible that all our efforts are contributing to the same goal. And with this also is an invitation to continue working and with your work and your effort to support implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals, but as well the Climate Change Agreement.